You are now listening to theGrio's Black Podcast Network, Black Culture Amplified.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Dear Culture, the podcast for by and about the culture here at the theGrio Black Podcast Network. I'm your host, Panama Jackson, and today we're going to talk about another film that had the Black community in an uproar. It is a movie that we love to hate, and I think even if you haven't seen it, people have an opinion about this movie based on all of the negative press that preceded it, especially if you were watching movies back in the 2000s when this movie came out. So I guess I have to caveat that with the if you were around when this movie came out. We're talking about Soul Plane today here on Dear Culture. And to do that, I brought along the homie, Damon Young, who is a writer in residence at the University of Pittsburgh, which is a very cool title. He does some very cool things there. The author of the award-winning What Doesn't Kill You Makes You Blacker. One of my partners in Right, one of the co-founders of Very Smart Brothers with me. So basically, this is somebody who's been around for all of my accomplishments and I for his, and somebody who we have some of the most insane conversations about, including what hopes to be this one. What's going on, bro? How you doing today?
Hey, that was a great intro. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. I'm good. I'm it's sunny. It's cold, but it's sunny here in Pittsburgh, so I'm doing okay.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad it's sunny in Pittsburgh.
It's good to see you.
It's always good to see you, bro. We talk all the time, but we don't hop on these things all the time. So
and you're right. We're not FaceTiming ass niggas.
We are not.
Can I say that? Can I say it?
Well, you probably shouldn't. But it fits the tone of this film.
This is a Soul Plane podcast, so
we just don't want to have to bleep out everything. Okay. So, but okay. But since we're talking about Soul Plane, before we get going, let's go ahead and throw to the trailer real quick. So, for those who do not know what I'm talking about, or those who just need a reminder of what Soul Plane was, you will get your refresher.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you for choosing the Soul Plane.
From the time you arrive at the gate.
You doing good? Yeah. You feel wonderful.
Till the moment you meet the crew.
Hey, Captain.
At ease, ladies.
We make sure you have an unforgettable flying experience.
Peep out this little safety video we put together for you.
Now that you got on our plane and you've been listening, you better just do as we say or you'll be missing.
Woo, woo. Sit tight and enjoy the flight.
Kevin Hart.
Mayday! Mayday!
Tom Arnold.
Oh, hey!
D.L. Hughley.
Damn! Sorry. Well, I guess you can't have the lightning without the thunder.
Method Man. Monique. And Snoop Dogg.
What the hell's going on here?
Man, I'm afraid of heights.
It was billed as like an urban version of Airplane, but that could not be further from the truth because Airplane, I hate to say this, was a very boring movie to me.
Sir, excuse me, sir. I'm sorry I have to wake you. You a doctor?
That's right.
We have some passengers that are very sick. Could you come take a look at them?
Yes, of course.
I actually watched that because of Soul Plane, and I was bored to tears. So, before we get into it, what was your take? You watched Soul Plane recently. And was that your first time watching it?
Yes, it was my first time watching it on purpose. Like, because I've seen it, I've seen bits and pieces of it on cable or whatever, but this was my first time actually, you know what, I'm going to watch this movie from start to finish on purpose. Right? Okay, which I feel like I might be the only nigga in 2024 that's watching Soul Plane on purpose. Like, I feel like I just said, okay, me and you are the only ones.
Give me your overarching thoughts. Like, before we get into the review, because I have a ton of reviews that I got to read about this movie from back in 2004. What was your impression of this movie now, watching it in 2024?
I feel like I could confidently say it's the worst movie I've ever seen.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
You feel that strongly. The worst movie you've ever seen.
It is the worst movie I've ever seen. Yeah. And the thing is like, I try, and I'm saying this, now there's a lot of bad movies out there. And these are movies I just haven't seen or I haven't watched all the way through. You know what I mean? I know you're a connoisseur of the more, creatively bad cinema.
Guilty as
right?
charged.
And I try to stay away. Okay. try to stay away from that. I mean, that's your, that's your ministry is to give everything a chance, and I don't.
Praise the Lord.
Right? And so, yeah, Soul Plane was remarkably, like, categorically, like, intrinsically terrible, right? But it was entertaining because when you watch something that is so bad, right, you can't help but be entertained by it because, it's like, you recognize that you're watching history. You know what I mean? That you're watching something that is the best at something, even if it's the best at being bad.
So it's interesting you say that because I'm not going to call it a good movie, but I don't think the point of this was to be a good movie, right?
No.
The entire point of this movie was to be as ridiculous as possible, at which point it was highly entertaining. This movie literally skewers everybody, right? There is no community that doesn't catch a stray or a full-on bazooka shot to the face in this movie, right? Like they were just like, you know what? Bring up a community. I need any community available because they're catching one. They're catching a body in the making of this film, which almost made it, kind of an equal opportunity offender, which made it not as offensive to me because, we as a community felt very strongly about this. I would never call this the worst movie I've ever seen, but that's also what
Then what is? What's the worst movie? Because before Soul Plane, I gave that title to Vanilla Sky, with Tom Cruise and Penelope.
Terrible
Cruz.
film.
Yeah, terrible, awful.
Different types of movies because Vanilla Sky was supposed to have a point. There's no point to Soul Plane. I don't even feel like they live in the same universe.
Well, and they were I think they might have been made in the same year or around the same time. But so Soul Plane, the thing that, and again, you know what I mean? I appreciate ridiculousness. I appreciate, like I spend most of my time watching YouTube rap battles. So I love nigga shit. I love ridiculous nigga shit. That's me. That's my bag, right? You know what I mean? I go down rabbit holes. But the thing that made Soul Plane so bad to me is that it's not funny. And so it's ridiculousness. Right? So it's ridiculousness, right? And offensiveness, but there's no actual humor. Like I'm watching it and I'm like, yo, when is something actually going to be funny in this movie?
I'm gonna say something that's gonna hurt my heart. I think you have reached your highfalutin part of life where your view of humor now has to have some type of like Atlanta. We talked about how funny the show Atlanta is. This ain't this. This ain't
Atlanta.
This is in your face. Pure shtick.
But Undercover Brother, which also came out around the same time, is also ridiculous as fuck. Also skewers so many different people. I think that movie is still hilarious. Like I watched it again a month ago, and I still think that that movie was really funny. This ain't that. So I can still appreciate ridiculousness. I still appreciate all types of humor across the spectrum. But the reason why I feel like this movie is so bad is because it ain't actually funny.
Okay, that's fair. I disagree, but that's fair. So let's talk about some of the stats on this. I want to do some reviews and let's break this down. So this movie was written by Chuck Wilson, who was a black person, and Bo Zanga, who was not. So at least we know a black man was involved in the writing. And this is one of Spike Lee's early interns, which is very interesting because of Spike's comments about this movie. It was directed by Jesse Terrero, who was I know him as a music video director. Very prolific. Yeah, he did like a lot of the G Unit stuff. He directed videos for Jill Scott. The music was handled by RZA.
So which surprised me saying that.
Yeah. Listen,
that actually would have shocked me.
So it's funny because yeah, I know, right? So it's funny because when you go back and look at these movies that people view negatively, a lot of very prominent people that we respect very like highly are part of these universes. So who's in this movie though? So let's go. Kevin Hart, Snoop Dogg, Tom Arnold, Method Man, Katie O'Bear, who was a thing in the 90s and 2000s. She plays his girlfriend. She was like one of the she wasn't a video vixen, but she was just like a woman that she was in the magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah, she was in all the King magazines, the XL, like Smooth Mag, Showman, like all that stuff. Yeah.
She was in that universe. Godfrey, the comedian Godfrey, Brian Hooks, Monique, Lonnie Love, Samore, Sofia Vergara, Dio Hughley, John Witherspoon, Terry Crews, Richard T. Jones, and we have cameos from Lil Jon, the East Side Boys, the Yin Yang Twins. Karl Malone makes a cameo in this movie. Karl Malone makes a cameo in this movie. The movie had a budget of, let's see, what was the budget? 16 mil.
$16 budget.
Nah, man, somebody had to pay for the rims. Somebody had to pay for the CGI on the rims. The box office did like 15, so it didn't even break even, though. If you ask people like Kevin Hart, this was around the time, and there might be something to this, everything got bootleg heavy. I had so many albums that I bought off the streets of DC and New York that I never paid market value for because I got them on the street. So this was a heavy bootleg time for film. It's possible that the bootlegging did play a part. I don't know if this movie was going to do 30 or 40 million dollars, but it might have broken even if the streets hadn't got a hold of this film. So, but I don't know. I remember Kevin Hart had spoken about the fact that bootlegging killed the film. So let's talk about some of the reviews. I'm going to do this Rotten Tomato thing. So on the ranking, it has 18% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 51% audience score, which tracks. Let me read some of the reviews for this. All right. Because this is going to get into what I really want to talk about, which is the Black response to this movie. So there was a profile done in the LA Times on Soul Plane. Spike Lee said that Soul Plane was coonery and buffoonery, and he echoed what was the sentiments of many people. So other actors, writers, and directors have called Soul Plane a modern day minstrel show. There's definitely a feeling in the community that this is a film that really does cross the line, that doesn't have any conscience whatsoever, said Lee Bailey, who was a publisher and executive producer of the Electronic Urban Report back then. But I do want to frame the universe in which this comes out, which is around the time. So Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, prominent figures around this era. These are two people who threatened to stage a boycott against Barbershop, the movie Barbershop, because of the jokes about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. Bringing Down the House, which I do enjoy, which was a hit that had Queen Latifah in it. You know, several black groups staged marches and protests of that, or they thought the movie was outrageous. Actress Anne-Marie Johnson, who we all know from In the Heat of the Night and other things, said the filmmakers and cast have no respect for the scars Soul Plane leaves on the culture.
Oh my God.
Right? Yeah, so this is how bad it is. That's from
the scar it left on the culture.
Here's a response to that profile on Soul Plane by Morris W. O'Kelly in the LA Times a week later. Said it was 90 minutes of shameful humor that elucidates why African Americans often don't get the respect they deserve on and off the screen. The worst part is that movies like this give the impression that not only are African Americans like this in real life, but that African Americans are also craving more movies like this. So you see, the black community was not too fond of this film. So let me ask you a question. Back in 2000, why do black people hate this movie? You watched this recently. Okay. Why do we hate this movie? Why do black people hate this movie?
Well, I think, I think that some of that criticism, right, about like a set that's back and it being a scar to culture, that's some bullshit. And I think that we've become more cognizant of like being mindful of respectability. You know what I mean? Particularly like in the last like couple of decades.
Yes.
And so
the respectability was dripping on all of those reviews. It was dripping on through those reviews. Yeah.
And a movie can just be bad. You know, there's a lot of bad white movies that I've seen, and this is a bad movie, right? I don't think that it is an indictment on black people or black entrepreneurship or black movies, black culture. It's just a bad ass movie. That's it. And bad movies are allowed to exist. We're allowed to make bad art. We're allowed to appreciate bad art. So that sort of criticism of it, where it's like this indictment, this I don't know, this sign of like the recklessness of this spiritual rot that exists within the people who created the movie.
All right,
you know what I mean? It's like no, this isn't that. This is just a concept that might have worked with a bunch of jokes that didn't.
time for a quick break. Stay with us.
It's the secret story you haven't been told.
Good morning, comrades.
The Harlem Renaissance in the Soviet Union. Renowned poet Langston Hughes and some of his Harlem Renaissance friends were given the opportunity of a lifetime. Travel to the Soviet Union to make a movie.
We are here to do something grand, and we must look the part.
But not just any movie. A communist propaganda film for a Black American audience.
The project is meant to inspire a revolution here.
If Russians believed in our revolution, nothing can stop us.
Young, Black, and free to enjoy life without rigid rules on race and sex.
They do not do this sort of thing in Boston.
Sure they do. They just don't invite you.
But trouble soon followed.
How are we supposed to make a world-class film with a bunch of amateurs?
No! Give it back now!
She took a drink from a bottle thinking it was wine. Turns out it was formaldehyde.
This trip was lost to time until now. Harlem in Moscow is an audio drama based on the true story of this pivotal moment in Black history. Join us for the exciting adventure to the Soviet Union.
The revolution!
What was that?
Listen to Harlem in Moscow, starring Grammy Award-winning poet and producer Jay Ivey on the theGrio Black Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Comrades, we've been screwed.
Just because back then in those times, like, we definitely viewed every Black movie as some, like, not just a representation, but like the only one we were going to get. Like, we definitely used to be in this space where we felt like every movie was it was our last chance at getting another Black movie made. I mean, that speaks to, the fact that Jesse and Al, would literally want to boycott the movie Barbershop because one of the barbers in the movie, who was played by Cedric the Entertainer, made comments about Rosa Parks and MLK. I'm pretty sure if I remember, he called MLK a hoe in that movie.
Do not get this fool started on Martin Luther King. Let me tell you, now Martin Luther King was a hoe. I know you heard He's freaking everybody and everybody. Look here, so come Martin Luther King birthday, I want everybody take the day off and get your freak on.
And I think he might have actually said F. Jesse Jackson in the movie. I think that's who he said that about. Which would, but they're talking about Chicago. It's a barbershop. It's a movie set in a barbershop where we view that as a space where people can speak freely, for better or worse. We've all heard some ridiculous things in barbershops. I take my kids to the barbershop now, and I'm always prepared for the fact that I'm going to have to undo the history that might be given in the barbershop of whatever happens to be the conversation of the day.
Yeah. I mean, Jesse and all them niggas was bored. That's all I'm thinking, man. They I
do think Jesse tried to ban the N-word at one point. I think, was he part of the ban the N-word campaign?
Maybe. That would have surprised me if maybe he was. I'm not completely sure, but I just think they were bored and needed some shit to do. It's like, you know what? Someone says something about Martin and barbershop. But it's funny, and we're talking about just the difference and like respectability and how things are regarded, I guess culturally, and how I think the needle has kind of moved, or we have moved away, just as a culture. I mean, obviously there are still people who have investments in respectability and who are like, well, if we don't support this Black movie, then no more Black movies will get made, or if we don't support this Black show, or this music is like set back our people. There are still people who do that, but I think there's less people like that. And also the people who are like that don't have the same platforms that they might have had 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. I mean, I'm thinking, for instance, one of my favorite clips from Southside, the comedy set in Chicago was, I forgot her name, the officer and the older woman going back and forth.
Right.
And the woman basically cusses out Coretta Scott King.
Yes.
Says that, the bitch wasn't funny. And again, that was,
no, you gotta say, he wasn't funny. Like, right, he wasn't funny.
And that's just 20 years, 15, 20 years after Soul Plane. And that clip has gone viral whenever it hits the internet. Now, I mean, obviously there's some people who maybe feel a way about maybe consider that to be blasphemy or whatever. But again, I think that, things have changed a bit. People aren't as invested, or at least I think that it is more roundly considered to be anachronistic, to be that invested in respectability, right? Where you're talking about this thing being like, something that is some sign of like some cultural rot. Now, another thing about Soul Train, and this is something that I was waiting
Soul
for a
Plane.
review.
Soul Train was a different thing altogether.
All right, let me just say that again. Another thing about Soul Plane, and this is something that I was waiting for a review to mention. It is the horniest movie I've ever seen. Or maybe not ever. It is one of the top 5 horniest. It's like Porky's, like American Pie. Some of the, I'm not going to count them Cinemax movies because they just don't count as regular movies. But in terms of like a movie that was released to like an actual movie theater where people were expected to go see it. Oh, Wild Things is another one that was super horny. But this movie, there is either sex implied or sex innuendo or a joke about sex every minute of the movie. Like every minute there is another something about sex, or it's like something about dick size.
What you got in there? But we gonna find out. You wanna say something?
Or the daughter, and everyone's like, oh, this 18-year-old white girl is 18, so everybody get in line.
There's an 18-year-old white girl on the plane.
Yes,
everybody be prepared.
Like the whole movie is just sex. So, and again, I'm obviously no prude or not like that. I'd have no problem with sexual content in any measure, but again, it was just like strikingly sexual. The entire movie, like there was no let up, right? Even thinking back, every joke. Now there were some jokes that didn't have to do with sex, but they had to do with race, right? And the only joke in the movie that didn't have to do with sex or the black-white binary was when the Middle Eastern man got on a plane and everybody was acting like it was Osama bin Laden, right? And that was literally the only time that there wasn't like either a sex-related joke or blackness colliding with whiteness. Black people do this, white people do that sort of joke.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And we're going to take a real quick break here. We'll come back. We're going to talk more about that because you mentioning the brother, the man that got on everybody like treated like Osama bin Laden that's going to lead right into another conversation we'll have. So stay tuned right here on Dear Culture.
It's the secret story you haven't been told.
Good morning, comrades.
The Harlem Renaissance in the Soviet Union. Renowned poet Langston Hughes and some of his Harlem Renaissance friends were given the opportunity of a lifetime. Travel to the Soviet Union to make a movie.
We are here to do something grand, and we must look the part.
But not just any movie. A communist propaganda film for a Black American audience.
The project is meant to inspire a revolution here.
If Russians believed in our revolution, nothing can stop us.
Young, Black, and free to enjoy life without rigid rules on race and sex.
They do not do this sort of thing in Boston.
Sure they do. They just don't invite you.
But trouble soon followed.
How are we supposed to make a world-class film with a bunch of amateurs?
No! Give it back now!
She took a drink from a bottle thinking it was wine. Turns out it was formaldehyde.
This trip was lost to time until now. Harlem in Moscow is an audio drama based on the true story of this pivotal moment in Black history. Join us for the exciting adventure to the Soviet Union.
The revolution!
What was that?
Listen to Harlem in Moscow, starring Grammy Award-winning poet and producer Jay Ivey on the theGrio Black Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts. Starting on March 25th.
Comrades, we've been screwed.
All right, we're back here on Dear Culture. We're talking about the movie Soul Plane. I'm joined by Damon Young. And we kind of disagree on whether this movie is funny or not, but this is going to bring up something that I do want to talk about. So about whether or not I think the movie gets a bad rap, because I do think I find the movie funny, but in terms of the amount of jokes that it makes about race, about class, about everybody, stereotypically, I could understand how every community would see this movie and be upset about it. Like, if you're a West African, I mean, you have every right to just be 100% pissed at this movie. If you're a Catholic, there's the Catholic priest jokes. There are jokes. There's the brother who you just mentioned, the brother that got on the plane that everybody looked at like Osama bin Laden. In first class, they're getting lobster or filet mignon. In low class, there's a low class section of the plane. They're passing around fried chicken, and you got to take a piece out the box. There's a club on the airplane. There's also the stereotype, like what black people would do with money. Like if you remember the Chappelle Show sketch, like we got reparations, people playing CeeLo for their reparations checks. You know what I'm saying? It's like all of that stuff is in there. So while I enjoyed it, I also could understand why people be like, yo, this is really messed up. Like, y'all really didn't let up off the gas. But because they didn't let up off the gas on anybody, I think it's hard you kind of got to be like, everybody was fair game. But did it earn its bad rap?
Yeah, I think the jokes are so absurd and absurdly offensive that they're not actually offensive. You can't watch this movie and take anything in it seriously. Because it's just so like it's so terrible, right? Like for instance, you mentioned the Catholic priest. There is a conga line that just comes out of nowhere in the middle of the movie with gay men, trans people, and Catholic police chasing them, right? And it's just like, why is this even there? What is the point?
Why did it do? Because the co-pilot, the West African co-pilot, his last name is Gaiman. And they call out on the airlines like, can Gaiman please come to the front?
Oh, yeah. Also things that haven't necessarily aged well. You know what I mean? We've talked about a few of them. One of them is that this is definitely pre-BBL. Because and again, remember the time when women who had natural curves were like, oh, look at that. You know what I mean? That was a thing. There was like a scene where there was like this big reveal of a woman in a bikini and a bathing suit, and she turns around and everyone's like, oh, and it's a normal, natural woman. But today, if that scene exists, you know what I mean? The level of curves are going to be outrageous or more outrageous, right? So this movie exists in a pre-BBL era where you see women who are beautiful and are curvy and or whatever, but you just don't see the level of absurdity with bodies that you
it's not cartoonish.
It's
like
not
it
cartoonish.
got at some point.
It's not cartoonishly curvy like you see in videos and stuff right now.
Or like King Magazine was back in the day.
Yeah. Kevin Hart orders Hypnotic when he goes to the bar. When was the last time? Someone.
To be fair, on TikTok right now, no. On TikTok right now, there are people pouring Hypnotic into Starbucks like refreshers as a drink. I saw this recently, and I was like, for one, I didn't know Hypnotic was still made. I did not know that was a drink and still in production, but it turns out it is. Apparently there's a renaissance.
I am impressed with your algorithm. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, it was shared with me. It wasn't on my algorithm, but it was shared with me, and I was like, "Wow, those are Starbucks, the little dragon fruit refresher things, and they're pouring Hypnotic in it." And I'm like, "Diabetes, here we come." Okay, so
all right. When was the last time? Was this the last time Sofia Viagra was around this many niggas?
Her name is Sofia Vergara, not Viagra.
All right, let me repeat. Let me repeat that. All right, let's cut. How do you say her name again?
Sofia Vergara, not Sophia.
All right.
If you want to say Viagra, that's not it. It's not her name.
So, all right, another question. When was the last time Sofia Vergara was around this many niggas? Or was this the last time?
Disengage the autopilot.
How the hell do you know that?
Well, I used to date this pilot, and we make love in the cockpit.
Oh, no. She was also in a
this many
Tyler Perry
niggas.
movie, Meet the Browns, in 2008.
Okay.
So she was in the Tyler Perry. She's in the Tyler Perry universe, too.
Okay.
She was in Meet the Browns.
I did not know that. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Lala is in it randomly.
Lala, the version of Lala from 2004 is in it.
Yes. It's 2004 Lala. Home Alone, if we're talking about what aged the worst, this movie of all the celebs,
Of all the
the
people.
NBA players.
There's a mention of Puffy. Puffy's mentioned in the movie. I mean, the 2004 world was much different than the 2024 world.
Different. And so my biggest question, and this is actually something that, our boy Cat Williams brought up, right? And something that even at the time I was actually intrigued by was the fact that, Kevin Hart was not a big deal yet. He hadn't had his comedy specials that had, at least he hadn't had the comedy specials that we all know yet. And yet he is picked to be the star in this they spent $16 million. They get all these stars, all these comedians, and Kevin Hart is the one who is the centerpiece. And that actually was like, oh, like I remember even back then, like, who the fuck is this? Like, I've heard of all these other people, and I don't even know who this guy is. Now, obviously, Kevin Hart is Kevin Hart now, but that decision to make him the lead when you have this, it's basically a who's who of Black comedy at the time, was a curious one to me.
So what was that's what I'm looking for. The Rockefeller movie. He was one of the stars of the Rockefeller movie, Paper Soldiers.
Yeah.
That's probably how he got here. He was in that movie. I remember that. And then there was he was on a Judd Apatow TV show. But Paper Soldiers was the first one that I remember, like Kevin Hart being a part of it.
I mean, okay, so what year did 40-year-old virgin come out?
That's 40-year-old virgin comes out in 2005. So it's the next year. Okay. So he's on his ascent at that point. He's moving. He's starting to get these bit role. I bet if Soul Plane was better, he would have got a better. Now he was iconic in 40-Year-Old Virgin. Let me go ahead and say that was an amazing performance in 40-Year-Old Virgin. Yes. 40-Year-Old Virgin. I love that scene. It was a great scene.
Well, check this out, though. First of all, you're throwing too many big words at me. Okay, now because I don't understand them, I'm going to take them as disrespect. Watch your mouth and help me with the sale.
So that's probably what helps him go from the guy from Soul Plane that nobody watched to all of a sudden, hey, who's this guy? Who's this guy here? Because this was a scene.
One of the things that was also curious about the movie, I'm watching it, is that they have Kevin Hart, and Kevin Hart is the straight man.
He is the straight man in the movie.
Yeah, he's not really allowed to be Kevin Hart. In the 40-year-old version, he's able to be funny. But in this movie, everyone else is getting the jokes. Everyone else is getting the punchlines. Everyone else is getting the ridiculousness and the absurdness. And he is like the one who was trying to, I guess, put out fires.
Ladies, it's me. It's Deshaun Wade, the owner of this airline. I mean, come on, remember I hired y'all? It's him. There you go. That's a little more like it right there. Don't y'all have amnesia?
And, be like, oh, this is he gets some jokes off and some,
he's hilarious in the beginning part.
Funny.
Right.
Yeah. But
his jokes are all on the why he ended up getting $100 million in the first place when he's in the toilet and all that stuff.
Oh! Hey, I can't get out! My ass is stuck!
I don't know. Like, maybe let him cook a little bit. Why have Kevin Hart in this movie if you don't let him cook? You could have put anyone else in that role.
To be fair, they might not have known what Kevin Hart cooking really looked like at that point. But also, I tend to really enjoy when comedians who we know for being extra play the straight man. So are you familiar with the TV show The Last OG with Tracy Morgan?
Yeah.
Well, Tiffany Haddish is the straight man in that TV show. Like, she's very or even I think it's Night School. Like, even the movie Night School with Kevin Hart and Tiffany Haddish, Kevin Hart is ridiculous and she kind of is the center. And I love her in those movies. Like, when she's not going overboard, I actually really like Tiffany Haddish in those roles.
She was that in Keanu too.
Yeah, she was like that in Keanu. Yeah. So I actually enjoyed them when the people who were like, we know for being extra, give us a version of themselves. Now, back then, 2004 is a little early for us to get muted Kevin Hart. So I take your point, especially in a movie as ridiculous as this. Like, this would be the movie where everybody can kind of do whatever they want because everybody else is hilarious. Monique and Lonnie Love were hilarious as the security at the checkpoint when you come in. Because I'm like, that might be that's what it feels like now. Hell, that's what TSA feels like right now sometimes. No shade to all of our homies who do TSA work, but I'm just saying.
Can't you read? The sign says put all metal objects in a container. Take your ass on. Get on back there. Get your ass back here.
Is there a better movie in this movie that could have been made? Like, is there a better version of this movie back then that they could have made some different choices?
I mean, that's a low as fuck bar.
Yeah.
You're asking me.
I don't think I want to see a better version of that
movie. If there's
movie.
a better version of the worst movie that I've ever seen, yes. Yes, there's a much better version of this movie.
But I mean a better version of that movie. Like, a better version of that. Is there anything? Because I actually don't want to see a better version of this movie. I don't want to see a version of this movie that takes itself even a little bit serious. Like, it needs to be exactly what it is, where everybody is as ridiculous as possible. The white family is nonsense, but they go to Crackerland. Like, the fact that Tom Arnold signed on to this, I'm just like, what was the version of the script?
He needed a deck. He needed a deck. He needed a new deck. He was like, you know what? I'm a little I'm a little cash poor right now, so you're going to have to give me a bag.
I'm asset rich and cash poor. Like, I need some quick. Like,
they paid him in cash every day. I think everyone got paid in cash.
They all got paid
at the end of the set
duffel
every day.
bags.
Just envelope or a duffel bag or a fucking Popeyes box full of 20s. But yeah, I think that if you remove the white family, I think that alone right there, that takes away all of like the black dick jokes, which are like, okay, come on. She's 18 and everyone's going to be in line to fuck this 18-year-old white girl jokes. That's like, come on. And so I think just removing that right there makes the movie better.
The movie is about 45 minutes longer than it needed to be to get the exact same result. But then you lose a bunch of jokes that they just decided they had to get in. I actually wonder if they had to figure out how to make the movie longer, hence why John Witherspoon scenes are even in there. It was like, dog, we have 110 minutes. No, we have like an hour and 10 minutes, guys. We're not going to get a theatrical release unless we get to at least an hour 25.
It didn't feel like the sort of movie where they had to cut a whole bunch of shit. Like, I don't think anything was cut. Right. Considering what made the cut, I don't think anything was cut.
Yeah,
from this movie. And I mean, and there's other things that, let me think. There's other things that we didn't even talked about. You got also like the white boy who becomes, I don't know, Flavor Flav in like 20 seconds.
Yes,
of being.
He was in the Malcolm X terminal.
Yeah,
and he found the urban wear store, and he maxed out the credit card and bought all the Rockaware he could find that fit.
I haven't heard the term baloney pony, riding the baloney pony. I haven't heard. I thought I'd heard most of like the, the sex positional, lexiconical things before teabag. But I haven't heard riding the baloney pony. Right. So that was new to me. Right. It might be old to you all listening, but it was new to me.
I've never heard that phrase before, except for the first time I watched this movie, and I'd forgotten about it until then as well.
I did appreciate that everyone got a full meal, even the people that got chicken in the back. When was the last time you got, like, I would love a piece of chicken, a piece of Popeye's fried chicken on a plane. Yeah. Like, when was the last time you ate an actual meal on a flight?
I don't know why one of these companies doesn't. I mean, I guess they got these long-term contracts, but you think, like, can you imagine like serving Popeyes on would you not immediately be like, I'm flying that airline
immediately?
If Popeyes is selling chicken, if Popeyes is what you get on that, like, I'm immediately like, that's an incentive. It's like, so what, I got to pay $50 for my check bag or whatever and my carry-on. dude, Frontier's stock would go up if they just partnered with Popeyes. You'd be like, you buy a ticket for $50 and then buying the seat, the pilot, the landing gear, all the other stuff, which gets your ticket to like $700. But if I'm getting Popeyes, I might be all in.
Yeah, a first class ticket gets you like an extra 6 inches of leg room and some ginger ale, and you get to sit down first.
All right. Last question, and then last question before we take this last break and we get to our Black fashions and stuff. Could this film be made in 2024? And would it? Okay. So you don't think this movie could even be made now?
No. I mean, it would be okay. So you could make a movie about a black man, a hood nigga who gets 100 million and decides to start his own airplane or airline, right? You could make that movie today, but you can't make Soul Plane today.
Right.
It would be a different movie, different jokes, but this movie today, there's so many and again the jokes. Yeah, they're not even
international
really
organizations would come down on this film.
They're just racist memes. That's just like racist and like gender transphobic memes. Just a collection of memes over and over again instead of
the jokes you don't make nowadays are all in this movie. Every possible joke that you would never make nowadays under any circumstance, and something that you want people to pay money to be a part of, you would never do now. Yes, I agree with that. All right. Well, I agree with you. So you think it's one of the worst movies you've ever seen?
Yes.
I don't think it's a good movie at all, but I was highly entertained.
I never said I wasn't entertained.
You did say you were entertained, actually. Yes.
I never said I wasn't entertained.
Just one of the worst movies.
I would be entertained watching squirrels hoop. If there was like some squirrels playing basketball outside of my window right now, that would be entertaining as fuck. But it would be the worst basketball I've ever witnessed.
Fair enough.
Right? But I wouldn't take my eyes off of it. Right?
All right.
So Soul Plane is like squirrels. It's like watching squirrels hoop.
All right. Well, I think that's a wonderful place to end that discussion. I don't think I could have said that any better myself. So we're going to take one more break. We come back on Dear Culture. We're doing Black fashions and Black recommendations on Dear Culture. Stay tuned. All right, we're back here in Dear Culture with Damon Young. We just got finished talking about the movie Soul Plane, which you compared to squirrels playing basketball. I appreciate that is why you're here. This is why you are Damon Young. This is why you teach classes on humor writing. This is what you bring to you're the table, bro. This is what you bring to the table.
Okay.
You bring the table.
Thank you.
So as the table, we do obviously here at Dear Culture, we do Black fashions and Black recommendations. You've been here before. I don't remember what your Black fashion was last time, but I'm going to ask you for another one because I'm greedy. So do you have a Black fashion, which for those who are listening is a confession about your Blackness, something people will be surprised to learn about you because you're Black? Do you have a Black fashion?
I do.
Okay.
So when you reached out a couple weeks ago, it's like, hey, Damon, I'm doing this podcast, Dear Culture. I want to bring you on to talk about Soul Plane. My first response is like, oh yeah, I'm with it. Let me, of course, anything you need me to do, I got you. Just let me know time and place. I'm there.
I appreciate that.
My second thought was, shit, now I got to go see Soul Plane. Okay. So I watched this movie. I hadn't seen it before. Right. So I watched it in anticipation of doing this podcast. Now I had seen bits and pieces of it on cable,
right?
And I was aware of it. Obviously, I knew who all was in it. I didn't know Terry Crews was in it. I didn't know Monique was in it, but I knew all the rest of the people that were in the movie. But in terms of watching it intentionally, this was my first and will be my only time.
I will say, a lot of movies get ruined by watching them with a purpose. And like, this is definitely one of those that there's no reason to watch this movie for real. Like, you just watch it because it is on and you do not feel like changing the channel. Black recommendations. So usually to counter the Black fashion, we have a Black recommendation, which is a recommendation for, by, and about Blackness, something you think Black people should be up on for the culture. Do you have a black recommendation for us?
I mean, I think the most obvious one, I just reviewed this book for the New York Times, Great Expectations by Vincent Cunningham, who writes for the New Yorker. I enjoy reading it. It's a quick book too. It's only 249 pages, so you could finish it in like a day, maybe a day and a half, 2 days, or whatever. And it's autofiction about a young man's experience working for the Obama campaign, for the campaign of an Obama-like figure, because Obama's not actually named in a book. And it's a book that just talks about it. It's a book that talks about Blackness in a way that is rare, I think, in terms of like just the intra-racial lexicon of how of like hierarchy and status and in how we move amongst each other. There's also really good writing in here about basketball, also really good writing about sex in here too. Not a lot, but it's in there, and I appreciated reading it. And again, so yeah, it's literally sitting right here on my desk. So why not recommend the thing I just recommended in a book review?
All right, that's Great Expectations by Vincent Cunningham.
Yeah,
which is available in stores now.
Mm-hmm.
As is your review in the New York Times about the book.
Yes. Okay, I do have something else.
All right.
I started growing locks about I guess 14 months ago. And now I have them twisted in like this, braid situation happening right now. 2 braids, you can see if I turn around, whatever. And I was at the point where I didn't know what to do with my locks because they were just there. And I was like, do I just continue to swoop them on one side of my head like some Killmonger shit? And I got tired of doing that. And so this is the first time in my life that I've had braids. Like I missed the whole braids era of like the 90s and the early aughts. Like I had to, I was a low cut Caesar with the waves guy for like 30 years, basically. Right. And so this is the first time I've had braids. Maybe I had braids when I was like 2 or whatever, but first time I've like consciously, made a decision to get braids. And I like this. I like this look.
It's a good look for you, bro. It is a good look. I've commented many times about the evolution of the Damon Young style and aesthetic and how fly you are. And like, you look like an actual creative artist Negro now. Like, you look 100% like an artist at this point. I might not know what kind of art you make. You could be a rapper. You might be a painter. You could be a writer. Hell, you might do pottery really well. I don't know. Like, but you have fully morphed into your artist aesthetic. And I think it really works for you.
I appreciate you saying that. I also have to say that our mutual friend, Sada Grundy, said that I look like a really hip megachurch pastor.
Okay. That also, your shoe collection is what puts that over the top. Yes,
so
that would be.
She says I'm dressing like a megachurch pastor who's trying to be hip. So I have to say that also.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you for being here on this episode of Dear Culture, where we talked about Soul Plane. Fun convo, always is. What you got going on that people need to check out? Where can people keep up with whatever you got going on now? You have a lot of things coming up in general.
Yeah. So I have my residency at Pitt, at University of Pittsburgh, and what that is, I'm there for a year. They give me, I get paid. I have an office on campus. I'm not teaching, but I do do workshops. I did one first semester. I'm doing a couple this semester. My next one, I don't know when this is airing, but the next recording's on a Tuesday, and this Friday I'm doing a workshop on writing about place. Also, I have a couple other speaking things coming up. I have one thing in Pittsburgh with Terrence Blanchard, the trumpeter, Spike Lee's collaborator,
his go-to guy for like soundtracks. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. Also have a couple books on the works. Next one will be an anthology on Black American humor that I'm editing and curating. That'll be out next spring. you are in it, although you're not in it as much as I wanted you to be. And I'll just let that go.
That is my fault. 100% my fault. I did not submit the thing that I was asked to submit for probably more than a year.
We got shit. We got many hats, many tables.
That is on me.
Going on,
that's my fault.
I get it. So that's just a few of the things in the works. And I'm not on Twitter anymore, but I'm still pretty active on IG at Damon Young VSB, which is my IG handle. So
yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, bro. This was a fun convo. I'm sorry that I made you watch Soul Plane on purpose, but
no,
I'm glad you've now seen it on purpose.
Enjoyed myself. I had a good time watching these squirrels hoop.
There you go. And so for everybody who's listening out here, thank you for listening to Dear Culture here on the Grill Black Podcast Network. Make sure you check out all the other shows that we have on the Grill Black Podcast Network that are amazing, like the Grill Daily with Michael Harriet, Blackest Questions with Dr. Christina Greer. Teray has a new iteration of Being Black, the 70s, coming out soon. We just have a bunch of amazing content to check out here. So thank you for listening. Thank you for keeping up with what we got going on. Have a black one.
We started this podcast to talk about not just what Black writers write about, but how.
Well, personally, it's on my bucket list to have one of my books banned. I know that's probably bad, but I think...
Ooh, spicy. They were yelling N-word, go home. And I was looking around for the N-word because I knew it couldn't be me because I was a queen.
But I'm telling people to quit this mentality of identifying ourselves by our work, to start to live our lives, and to redefine the whole concept of how we work and where we work and why we work in the first place.
My biggest strength throughout my career has been having incredible mentors, and specifically Black women.
I've been writing poetry since I was like 8. I've been reading Langston Hughes and James Baldwin and Maya Angelou and so forth and so on since I was like a little kid.
Like the banjo was blackity black, right? Mm-hmm. For many years. Everybody knew.
Because sometimes I'm just doing some Sam that because I just want to do it.
An honor to be here. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Keep shining bright. And like you said, we gonna keep writing black.
As always, you can find us on the theGrio app or wherever you find your podcasts.